Welcome back. Ontario's latest budget has been released, and the province says the $186 billion spending plan is aimed at helping Ontario emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic. And joining us now is Ontario Finance Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy for a government that primed itself on eventually balancing the budget. Obviously, the pandemic then kicked in. How do you reconcile the fact that you are now planning to rack up more than $100 billion in deficits over the next 4 years?
Well, Phil, I think it's government's role to help out in society when times are tough, be it a recession. Now we're in a pandemic, and as finance minister, our government is going to pull out all the stops. The Premier made an unconditional promise to the people of Ontario a year ago that we would spend whatever it takes, and I think that's the right thing to do. It'd be a lot higher cost if we didn't. So that's why we announced more investments like vaccination, $1 billion, $2.3 billion just this year for testing and tracing. We're pulling out all the stops so we can get a vaccine in everyone's arms, continue testing, and get our lives back to normal. I think that's what Ontarians want.
Now, also, Ontarians might be kind of happy in a way that there are no new tax increases, but because of that, how do we expect to pay these bills? People are throwing out the numbers of, $500 billion in debt by 2023-24.
Well, let me remind everyone, the interest rates are very low, so it's very affordable, the debt. But longer term, these deficits are not sustainable. So there'd be several ways we're gonna move forward. One is I'm betting on the people of Ontario. Economic growth, we were leading the country in job growth before the pandemic. We haven't recovered all the jobs lost through the pandemic, but I can tell you that we are going to be very focused on economic growth. And I think, as government, we set the conditions, but it's the people of Ontario. We've got an incredible Ontario spirit. So that will really do a lot for our economy and for our fiscal situation. And I would just put the world on notice, don't bet against Ontario.
Well, what about those interest rates, though? How prepared is Ontario if those interest rates do go up?
Well, we're in great shape. We've been very focused on issuing long-term debt, and so what that means, we've been able to keep the borrowing costs very low, historic lows, and so that means we're in great financial position from an interest expense point of view, under 10%, so very sustainable. And I just, as finance minister, know that the best road to economic growth is having healthy people, because I always say you can't have a healthy economy without healthy people. That's why we're making unprecedented investments, not only to defeat the pandemic and this virus through vaccination and testing, but also unprecedented investments in our hospital capacity, long-term care, and mental health and addiction, as well as many supports for violence against women, anti-human trafficking funding, and for many that have been impacted most by this pandemic, the most vulnerable in society. So we're really pulling out all the stops to invest, not only for today, but for the long term.
All right, well, some people might say otherwise around here when we talk about tourism. Of course, one of the province's well-known destinations is Niagara Falls, is in our jurisdiction, and you're spending around $400 million on tourism and related industries over 3 years. Is that enough money, really, given that our government has identified the sector as being one of the hardest hit by the pandemic?
Oh, I think we recognize how many businesses, particularly in the tourism sector, the hospitality sector, which you mentioned, Phil, a lot in the region, have really suffered. They've been hit harder than most, and that's why I announced another $400 million today on top of the almost $250 million that we've already spent. To get it up to close to $650 million. Phil, I tell you, this is important to support our businesses. Some of it's for smaller tourism and hospitality operators through a new grant program. Some will be for larger anchor, major tourism and hospitality businesses. So again, we're really doing a lot to support those small businesses and medium-sized businesses until we get to the other side and get everyone vaccinated so we can reopen this economy.
Right, I guess it's a chicken and egg situation. You can't have the firing up of the economy unless everybody is healthy and vaccinated. And so we do find yourself in a bit of a balancing act. Well, we do appreciate the time, Minister Bethlenfalvy.